The other big news story today that I woke up to this morning and was desperate to follow: radical reforms to sickness benefits could force almost 1 million unemployed back into work. Now, those with mobility issues and mental health conditions could be encouraged to flexi work or work from home. If they refuse, they may even face a dock to their benefits. Now, these proposals aim to slash the eye-watering, ready for this, £26 billion welfare budget and to curb the 2.5 million currently out of work on long-term sick leave. So as Britain's sick note grows ever longer, I want to know tonight, is this a fair way to tackle the growing crisis? We'll talk to the panel in a minute. I have my opinions, but joining me first is the Vice Chair of Inclusion London and the Harrow Association of Disabled People, Adam Gabsi. Adam, welcome to Jeremy Carr Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining me. I want to try and do this unemotionally, because whenever politicians try and deal with these issues, it's always met by a chorus of disapproval. Let's talk about what this will mean for the genuinely long-term sick and disabled people across the United Kingdom who benefits are their only source of income.
It's going to be very, very difficult for the country as a whole. I don't think England is equipped or ready for any such change to the benefit system. 20% of people are disabled. They have been assessed and are put on long-term sick. Now, they have already been assessed. So certain people have been given lifelong benefits. And therefore, what is going to happen, it was a lifelong DLA until the expiry of DLA, which changed to PIP. And certain people like myself, who is a wheelchair user, have been given lifelong personal independence payment. And that seems to be only lifelong for the existence of personal independence payment.
Can I ask you this? Can I ask you this, Danny? This is Adam. Can I just hear me out, because I'll put this as honestly as I can. I want us to try and have the discussion centred on actually not the 100% genuine people who, through mental illness and through disability, cannot work. And absolutely, as a society, I would take on anybody who says that we should not support people like you forever. What I want to ask you, which is maybe a little bit difficult, but I'd love to know what you think. Do you think that of the 2.5 million people currently economically inactive, there are any within that figure, Adam, who are taking advantage of the system? Yes or no?
It's an interesting question. And maybe you're referring to 0.0000001% of people. And in this country, there is a culture of blaming the oppressed rather than blaming the oppressor. So I feel like the focus has been put on the wrong people here. Do
you feel betrayed by the government? Do you feel betrayed, Adam, by the government?
Yes, constantly. My most recent fight has been for personal emergency evacuation plans for disabled people that live in high-rise buildings. And the government have said all the right things and said, we support it. We're going to do what was recommended by the Grenfell inquiry to help hundreds of thousands of disabled people. And at the same time, they've turned their back and essentially said disabled people can burn.
Are disabled people treated better by this country than they were 20 years ago, my friend, or worse?
I think there's been a historic treating of indifference towards disabled people, and we can point to many examples of it. I would say Disability Rights UK, have a look, and it's been years long of discrimination, and it's just a fact, it's factual at this point. And they're blaming 0.0000.
What would you, Adam Gabsi, and I'm delighted to have you on this show. When I'm sat here, will be about both sides of the coin. What would you like to say to our government at this moment today? What do you want from them?
I would say the country is not ready. 42% of people that use food banks do not have good internet connection at home. only 11% of workplaces offer remote working. So it sounds great. We're going to help disabled people get into work, but there's at the moment currently they're taking people out of jobs with regard to assistance at train stations. And what's the point in saying disabled people can work if they can't get to the job and they can't remote work? Yeah, so it's just, it's not good at all. We're not in a good situation.
Adam Gabsi, Vice Chair of Harrow Association of Disabled People, thank you so much for making it on to Jeremy Live. 7:10. I'll introduce tonight's panel, apprentice star and commentator Joanna Jarju. Lovely to see you. Conservative commentator Benedict Spence wearing, I don't know, a blanket that his granny in Scotland once gave him, and political commentator Russell Quirk, who's turned up looking like Daniel Craig, or actually more like Wendy Craig from Butterflies. Welcome, one and all. Joe, can I just... Really important to get what Adam said, really important to get all sides, but there is another side to it which I tried to bring in. 2.5 million people currently economically inactive in this country. When I left school, I know it was many, many moons ago, you went to college or university or you got a job. I would venture to suggest, and I am not in any way, and I'm going to make this point, decrying genuine people who cannot work through illness, cannot work through disability. You would go some way to have to convince me that the entire 2.5 million people are genuine. And the concern in this country, cost of living crisis and the way things are, people start to ask questions and say, if you can't work, fine. If you could but you're not, give something back for your own sakes. Get out of bed, get something on your CV. That, I think, is an important point to make about today's announcement.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree, I'm under no impression that all of these people are necessarily, genuine people who can't work. I think a lot of people have fallen into unemployment as well after the pandemic. They tried being on furlough maybe and then just fell into it and thought that it was better. But I think that what's really important here is to make sure that when the government do this assessment, that they make sure that this is really careful and considered. And I think that also there should be some attention paid to employers as well, to make sure that if you're going to take a whole load of people that before, we didn't consider were fit to work, that employers are in a position as well to make, reasonable adjustments to be able to accommodate them as well. But I do think that, we could go down a massive, slippery slope where people have this reassessment of this test and then it goes too far and you have people like Adam who are now anxious that it could be in a position where they can't actually work. And actually, when it comes to disability as well, I think that it's fair to say, yes, OK, maybe you can work from home. But for a lot of people... You
made the point, didn't you, about getting there. I think that was a very relevant point.
Yes, getting there, but also the pain that people go through on random ad hoc
I think if I can bring you in, Russell, it's very much, whenever we talk, I'm going to say immigration very quickly for a reason, because there always seems to be that cloudy bit between genuine refugee seekers and economic illegal migrants. Here, absolutely, Adam, and I understand his concern and I understand how he would argue that the work capability assessment probably needs reforming. Yeah. My point to Joe is £26 billion a year to the British taxpayer, who's about to have to deal something with Birmingham City Council. Is this a fair way to cut costs? Do you understand the theory behind it?
Yeah, I do. And no one is suggesting that people that are genuinely disabled and unable to work will have benefits cut. This is a review, and I'm always very worried about reviews because they tend to be these things that are kind of kicked into the long grass. We never really hear the outcome. But the reality is we not only now have 5 million people on out of work-related benefits, and there are 1 million vacancies in the job market. Yeah. Now, that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The amount of people that are actually on benefits is 22 million people. That's the total. They're the people that are on universal credit and so on. We have undoubtedly and incredibly ended up in a situation where almost the majority of people in this country, almost, are on benefits. I mean, certainly more people now take benefits than actually kind of pay the lower rate of tax. So, and the other concern I have, of course, with reviews and looking at this, and let's assume that the government actually have good intentions for once, and it's actually quite a conservative thing to do, I have to say. So, well done, Conservative government. You've actually done something conservative for once. How are they going to assess people that are disabled when the majority of the work and pension staff are working from bloody home?
Interesting.
How do you assess someone on the phone?
The other thing, I completely agree. There's no doubt, Benedict, the work capability assessment needs reforming. I find it quite frightening because things get labelled, right? Yeah. So somebody wrote this question. Will encouraging the long-term sick back to work from home help to plug the gaps in the jobs market? We're not just talking about the long-term sick. We're talking about people who perhaps could work. Maybe there's apathy. Maybe they've been turned down. Maybe it's a difficult time. I get all of that. But I'm looking at it from the point I gave to Joe. Doesn't that help people get back to work by giving them skills, by giving them motivation?
What I hear so often, actually, from, when we're talking about disabled people long-term sick, is actually that they need motivation, that they are not incapable of working, but that the facilities aren't quite there. It's not easy for them to get into work. This sort of thing, if we are fully embracing the idea of working from home for some sectors, actually this is a fantastic step to allowing people who previously would have been unable to work because they couldn't get to and from work, but mentally completely fine.
As Adam was saying, that the difficulty is getting to and from work.
This enables and it empowers potentially a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of people who previously would have been locked out of work. It will allow some people to get back into work. That's fantastic. But I would take actually one point that Adam made, which I thought was rather salient, and that is things like internet access. If we are going to have a sort of a high-tech society where people are able to work from home, not all regions of the UK have equal broadband access, and it does affect productivity. It cannot be the case that, if we compare ourselves to places like Italy or Greece or Portugal, we actually have worse internet connectivity in places like Norfolk than you do in, say, Sicily.
You know that, because that's where you come from.
I would, and that's why I have to come down here, because nobody can get hold of me when I'm in.
There you go.
I mean, Benedict, you said it would empower them. Would it really empower? Is it
well, yes, they're earning their own money, gives them a purpose in life. Absolutely, it empowers, and it also takes the strain. We also have to be honest, it takes the strain off people who physically.
But do you think that the government are doing this because they genuinely want to empower people? I think a lot of people will be looking at this, disabled people, and thinking that this is more of a stick rather than a carrot.
This is the old thing, isn't it, about how reviews, announcements get labelled. I said it before, genuine refugees, illegal migrants. None of us are saying in any way that genuinely disabled people and people who are mentally ill and incapable of work. I absolutely will sit here. I am very happy to be part of a society that pays tax to support those people. But you cannot, I'm afraid, get away from the fact there are increasing numbers in this country who are, and we talk about loopholes, we talk about just take advantage of the system. I did a poll, which is interesting. We said up to 1 million sickness and disability benefit claimants are to be ordered to seek work as part of a plan to cut the 26 billion welfare budget. Do you think this is fair? Yes, 62%. No, nearly 40% as well. Frederick says, if a disabled person has a medical condition diagnosed by professionals, we shouldn't push them to do something they can't do. If they can't work, they can't work. Cameron, it depends why they're not working. Obviously, you can't make generalised rulings with this sort of thing. It needs to be done on a case-by-case basis. I think that's actually true. And Ruby, maybe if we cut the ridiculous amounts we're spending on the boat issue, we could afford to look after our own people comfortably. Look, at the end of the day, I think we would all agree very quickly, the system probably needs evolving, doesn't it? The way that these people are assessed, right?
There are not 2.6 million people in this country incapable of working. I would be happy to say that it might be 1 million, might be more, but that number seems very high. And I would be very interested to know how much bigger it is since before the pandemic. And how many of those people say that they have long COVID, which is something that is not actually diagnosable?
1 million of those are off work because of depression and anxiety.
Also true.
There's 1 million people in this country that are a bit anxious and can't get to work. That's rubbish.
Can be legitimate, but also I think that there's a difference between looking at how people assess it and also going after people who are fraudulent. Just like we're talking about with the small boat thing, you go after the actual criminals who are gaming the system.
It's just how you do it.
Anybody who's already being, in that quota
but it's
should
bigger
stay
than
in
0.0001, I can tell you that.
That's for sure. All right, you wind your neck in, you three. Thank you so much. All right, Muck Spence in your tartan jacket. Now,